I've had a few requests about Caenarfon, and I'm not surprised. It is a big part of your Edward paper, and actually a big part overall, about 10% of your whole GCSE. So I know why people are worried. Don't be worried. All your teachers have got information that breaks down the evidence and the explanations as to why Caenarfon was built, what its purpose was, what change it shows. So if you really are struggling, go and find them. They'll help you. The suggested answer booklet also has loads and loads in it. So again, go see your teachers or use the suggested answer booklet that's come out via parent mail. It's on the Open Drive. You've had it on Milk. It's everywhere. So make good use of it. But I wondered if this might help. So I'm going all low tech now. I'm just going to lose this screen. And I'm going to put up a list of possible questions that we think you could possibly get for Caenarfon. There's a definite theme with Caenarfon. So it's always going to be structured like this. The main reason that Welsh castles were built was to, so this is about purpose. So it could be to consolidate Edward's victory. It could be actually more about the long term. So is it a short term aim, basically? Is it the main reason short term because it's consolidating his victory? It's maybe meant to intimidate, that's short term. It's maybe meant to defend, that's mostly short term. Or is it more about long term, aiding Edward's annexation of Wales? Annexation, if you build a granny annex, then it's attached to your house, isn't it? So Wales would be an annex of England, but it would be under English rule. It would be part of, effectively, in terms of government and jurisdiction, it would be part of England. So that's a long-term reason. Was it done to intimidate the people of Wales? Again, that's more about short-term. Was it done as a symbol of Edward's royal authority? We know this is a preoccupation of Edward's throughout his reign. Does he see Wales and the castles that he's building as some way of showing his authority, his importance, not just in Wales, but wider context across England and across his empire and across the whole of Europe? Linked in with that is this about securing his legacy? Is it about this long term? How is Edward going to be remembered? He wants to be remembered as not just the king who invaded Wales, but the king who annexed, who colonised Wales for England. Linking there, consolidating his royal authority, it's just a play on words, really. The same evidence would work. Then, instead of being purely about purpose, is it about looking at how castles show some sort of change in medieval England? So it's not just what was the purpose per se of building the castles and Caenarfon in particular, but were the Welsh castles an indication of a wider change in medieval society? So is this about generally a wider change in how rebellion is dealt with? And does Caenarfon Castle show anything there? Or is it about changes generally to castle design? Master St George, who is the designer and the architect of Caenarfon Castle, he was building castles for the Savoy dukes in the Alps. He'd built castles further across in the east. Is Caenarfon part of that wider change in castle design? Or is it about changes in defensive functions of castles? They're beginning to be built more of stone now. They're being much more solid. These curtain walls, these arrow loops, all of that, are they a sign of how castle building has changed? Is it an idea of building these castles showing change because there is a change in government in Wales? So is this a part of how he takes over the government of Wales and settlement in Wales? Or this one here, are these castles a sign of the changing relationship with Wales, which is part of government? Are castles and the scale and the grandeur of Caenarfon in particular a sign of how prosperous England is becoming? I think that's one that you could get, and there's actually quite a bit of evidence in the booklet that you can use for that. Just pick the bits of evidence that you can best remember. You know, I've done that as a pick and mix situation. do the best you can. Pick the things that you want to remember, or that you think you can remember. That's why I haven't just given one answer. You've got a variety of things you can pick then. Or castles demonstrating that warfare itself is changing, as siege warfare is becoming a bigger part of war. Is this part of it? The fact that there's a well for fresh water in the well tower shows that it was built to withstand sieges. So is that the change that Caenarfon Castle is showing? So they are probably the best guess that we can come up with as to what might be asked in the exam. It's not an exhaustive list. Sadly, I don't have access to the inner workings of the chief examiner's brain. Would that I did, but I don't. So all we can do is think, well, given the evidence, given what Caenarfon's all about, this is the best guess we've got at what might come up. If you prepare these, but are prepared to be a bit flexible in the exam, don't assume that you have to follow anything slavishly, but go in with evidence at your fingertips and hope that you can fit what you see to what you need to write. Next, I just want to quickly run through how you might plan an answer to one of the questions and how you might structure it, just to help you see how you would build up an answer. So this one is: the main reason that Welsh castles were built was to intimidate the people of Wales into submission. So this is about the purpose of Caenarfon Castle, and it's more focusing on, was it short term? What was the short term purpose? So you might start thinking about short term and then bring in the idea of maybe longer term purposes. My suggestion for this would be that overall you agree that yes, they were built to intimidate the people of Wales into submission. So evidence in your first paragraph that you might use to agree with that is you can say, well, there was physical intimidation through castles. Specific evidence there is the fact that Caenarfon was whitewashed, that it sparkled, that it looked absolutely huge as a result, and that is in itself intimidating for anybody either approaching it for friendly or even for slightly more sinister purposes. It has these defensive features that we've talked about: the arrow loops, the murder holes, the 7-foot thick walls. They are all there to intimidate the Welsh, to put them off trying to in any way storm this castle. The level of investment, £250,000, given that an average clerk earned £5 a year and was considered fairly well paid, tells you that the scale of the investment, that is an investment that is about submission. It's about long term as well as short term. I am here to stay, and this castle is a symbol of that. It's an intimidating symbol of that. How do we explain that? Well, all of these are a visible reminder of Edward's now authority, conquest in Wales, but it's largely linked, with it being intimidation, to that being a short-term reason. We've talked before, wider context is needed, guys, if you're going to hit that level 4. So putting this into the wider context, this is a wider context of a building strategy across Wales, that ring of stone in the north of Wales, that is part of how Edward actually takes Wales after the first and then the second campaigns. Another reason to agree, so our second paragraph could be, well, we agree because Caenarfon is a symbolic depiction of Edward's royal authority. He is now the Prince of Wales. Once he has Edward, his son, he makes him the Prince of Wales. So there is an idea that this is going to become hereditary within the English crown. He picks Caenarfon because of its links to Arthurian legend and to the Emperor Maximus, who builds a Roman fort at Caenarfon. There's history there. He's built Caenarfon for a reason, and it's about intimidating and showing his authority in Wales. This is meant to subdue Welsh pride and Welsh identity. He's deliberately stripping it away and replacing it with British identity, linked therefore with Edward and England and his power. So this is an intimidation against the Welsh. Again, putting this into the wider context, this is part of Edward's desire for a wider empire. He has Gascony. He later on has designs on Scotland. Edward wants England to be a force to be reckoned within the known world, which is largely Europe and the East at this time. As always, remember our pad structure. We're making a plan, we're going to agree, but we need to disagree with the question. So the question is asking, is it to intimidate the people? Well, yes, but also we could disagree that there's a long-term function, purpose to the Welsh castles, and Caenarfon is evidence of that. So we could say that this isn't just about intimidation, it's about consolidating his colonisation economically and legally. So he actually grants a charter to the castle, which means that he has settlers there who can trade within the castle for the English. So he sees this as having a long-term purpose, not just that long-term intimidation. How do we explain this? Well, Caenarfon is a settlement that helps to consolidate his expansion within a wider empire, which is a long-term reason. That can link, of course, because you can't consolidate colonisation until you've intimidated and subdued. So you can say, yes, at first he has a short-term intimidation, but this links then to a longer-term consolidation. And I think that would give you that higher level of answer. And it links also to the fact that there is a population boom in England at the time. He wants Wales and Caenarfon to attract settlers from England, and he does. He attracts woodcutters, military men. They all go with their families, and it helps to consolidate that long-term settlement in Wales. You need to put a judgment, Padge. Plan, agree, disagree, and then judgment. So your judgment here is that you strongly agree that at least initially these castles were a physical and symbolic intimidation of the Welsh, and then they become part of the colonisation. Complex thinking, how do we show complex thinking in this? You're always showing that link to those wider aims, those wider themes of Edward's reign, so to empire, royal authority, and his long-term legacy. That preoccupies Edward throughout his reign, and Caenarfon Castle is a really good example of that. I hope that's helped. I keep saying it, but use your teachers, come and see us anytime, watch these a few times and use the suggested answer booklet to give you some more detail in terms of the evidence. Good luck as always.